American Sign Language, Cultural Language Notes, page 3, Introduction to American Sign Language. What is ASL? ASL, American Sign Language, is not a form of English. It is not every single English word signed in that English word order. Okay? ASL has its own grammatical structure, which is pretty different from English. Okay? ASL is a visual language, not an auditory one where you listen and is not spoken. ASL is composed of handshapes and movements. Okay? Those handshapes and movements are part of the 5 parameters. So the 5 parameters: handshapes, palm orientation is your palm up, down, to the side, forward, facing you. Location, where in front of your body or maybe on your body you are putting that handshake. Movement, are you moving it? Yes or no? And then how are you moving it if you are? And then once you string a bunch of signs together and put them in a sentence, then your facial expressions or your non-manual behaviors. Your non-manual behaviors are part of the grammatical structure. Okay, so if you, when you're asking, let's say, a question, if you forget to use your face, put your eyebrows a certain way, if you forget your facial expressions, then the sentence is technically wrong. Your grammar is wrong. Okay? American Sign Language, you can talk about anything. Okay? You can talk about subtle concepts, complex concepts, abstract ideas. As we go through this course and we have more only ASL days, no talking days, you will see that we can talk about ASL. I can teach ASL through using ASL. Okay? As time and society progress, as we have cultural changes, as we have technology changes, new signs are constantly being created and introduced to keep up with the times. Okay? Times change as society changes. Okay? For example, some of the signs, let's say if you look up a sign online, if you're looking up how to sign something over the weekend, you need to be careful because some of the signs that are online might be the old way to sign something. Okay? And sometimes those old signs are no longer appropriate. Okay? A lot of times I'll see like, oh, that is the wrong sign, just period, or that is maybe the racist version of that sign. Okay, so you just have to be careful and always ask if it's the correct sign or not. We'll get into that more later. ASL is not universal. ASL is mainly used in the United States and Canada. Every country is going to have its own sign language. Later on, as you learn about the history of ASL, you will come to find that ASL is more like French Sign Language and not British Sign Language. Okay, a very brief history. We'll get more in-depth history as we go throughout the school year. So in 1817, there were no schools for the deaf in the United States. Thomas H. Gallaudet knew that the only schools for the deaf were in Europe. So he went on a boat, went to Europe, was able to find Laurent Clerc and convince him to come back to America to start the first school for the deaf. The first school for the deaf was founded in Hartford, Connecticut. After students graduated from the first school for the deaf, they then went out to the rest of the United States and parts of Canada and start to spread ASL. Okay, show other people, teach other people ASL. Since the late 1800s, deaf people have been discouraged from using ASL. People put English on this pedestal and think English is the only way to go. They thought that teaching a deaf person speech, how to speak, and lip reading were better. That if you learned ASL, you weren't going to be able to learn anything. Children were even punished for signing if they were caught in their schools. So children were slapped on the wrist with rulers, had their hands tied behind their backs, and had to sit on their hands until their hands went numb. Okay, obviously it has changed. You are now taking it in high school, but it wasn't always this way. ASL is the natural language of the deaf community. For a person that is deaf, their natural language cannot be an auditory one. It just doesn't make sense. Deaf people are visual people, okay? So it makes sense that their natural language, something that comes naturally to them, that works for them, is a visual language. Okay. Asking for sign strategies. This is for whether we are in class or whether you start venturing out into the deaf community. Okay. Fingerspelling is never the first option when you are asking for a sign. Okay. We don't do that in English, like what's the word for, and then you say the word. Okay. What we do is you kind of talk around the word when you don't know it. Okay. So same thing in ASL. You can list things in a category that all tied together to that one word. You can list the opposite. So like if you don't know the sign for hot, you could be like, not cold. Okay, use the opposite. You can describe or act it out if it is easy to act out and use gestures. Or if you know the definition, you can give the definition. Okay, if the person that you are asking has no idea what you're talking about, then you may fingerspell. Okay. Use the signing skills and the words that you already have to ask your question. Some terminology. You will notice on the screen, deaf is written one of two ways, a lowercase d and an uppercase d. So the lowercase d focuses on the hearing loss, this part, not on the person as the whole. Okay, so if you don't know whether that deaf person knows sign language, has a hearing aid, is involved in the deaf community, if you don't know, if you just know that they're deaf, then use that. Okay, a deaf person, or the capitalized D, recognizes that there is a language, that it is a real language, that there is a deaf community, that deaf people have deaf culture, there is a deaf history. It takes everything into account with that capitalized D. Okay, that is the respectful, culturally appropriate way to call a deaf person. That's what you call them. Okay, the term hearing impaired should never be used. Okay, it's a derogatory term. It focuses on the hearing loss, focuses on their ear and not the person. Okay, it implies that that person is broken and needs to be fixed. Most deaf people don't want to be fixed, wouldn't have surgery or take a pill and have their hearing come back. Okay. Communicating in a deaf environment. This is for when you guys venture out into the deaf community, when it is safe to do so. Okay, so when you are in that environment, you should be signing at all times. There's no talking whatsoever. Okay, if you do need to talk, let's say maybe a parent comes, you need to answer the phone, step away, take care of your business, and then come back. Okay, when you are signing, especially when you're in level 1 and you're nervous, just do your best. Okay, the deaf person is going to see your signing level, your signing skill, and be like, okay, they're going to bring down their skills to match you, to make sure that you understand the conversation and that you can continue in that conversation. You don't have to freak out and worry about your grammar, your vocab. Oh my gosh, I'm talking to a deaf person. Will they understand me? Will I understand them? Just breathe and just sign what you know, okay? They'll bring down their level to meet yours. The deaf community is a minority group in the United States and Canada, okay? Linguistically, not everybody knows ASL. Culturally, It's a very small group within the United States. They are discriminated against, they are oppressed. So that's why when we are out in the deaf community, we are always signing. Okay, we need to make sure that we are keeping it assure equality for everybody. There's equal access to all information. Okay, so if you need to have that private conversation, step away. Okay, ensuring equality, it shows respect as well. Okay, keeping others informed. As you come to see throughout class and then when you're out in the community, the deaf community is a very tight-knit, very cohesive, a very supportive group of people. Okay, and one of the things in the deaf community is that they are very open and have no problem sharing information. One, it's keeping them informed of community events, life, what's going on, but it's also because of the history of not being able to use ASL in the 1800s and early 1900s. It's also now that they can share information. Okay, so as hearing people, we tend to not share everything about ourselves, especially if we think it's personal information. We're not going to share it. Okay, or if we're late or leaving early, we just do what we got to do. Okay, so as we're venturing into the deaf community, we need to become open and get used to sharing these habits. So explaining why you're late, explaining why you're leaving, explaining why you're leaving for a minute and just be like, I just got to go use the restroom. My mom's calling me. Okay. If you're in a group of people, then even just telling one person, oh, I need to go use the restroom, that person can then tell the rest of the group if somebody asks about you. Okay. It will take a little while to get used to sharing everything, and they will ask a lot of questions to get to know you, but you're just forming friendships. Okay. Interrupting others when you are out in the community or even in class. If two people or a group of people are talking and you want to join that group or you need to interrupt for whatever reason, you approach and you get their attention. Once everybody in that group or those two people have acknowledged you, then you explain, apologize for interrupting, explain why you're interrupting, what's going on. Okay, you just don't cut in. Okay, if you are out, let's say you're out buying clothes or you're at Starbucks and you see a deaf person is struggling ordering something or paying for something or asking for a different size. Okay, don't just start interpreting. Tell them, get their attention and be like, I'm an ASL student, whatever, would you like me to help you? Would you like me to interpret for you? Let them decide. We as hearing people tend to see a deaf person and be like, oh, let me do this. I know ASL, let me show off. It becomes about you as opposed to it being about the deaf person. Okay, if you are talking to somebody and your phone goes off or you hear something down the way, like a loud noise, okay, sign, either hold on or wait. Let them be like, acknowledge that you're trying to get them to wait. Don't just automatically break eye contact. Breaking eye contact with a deaf person is very rude. Okay, so once they acknowledge that you need to pause that conversation, explain what's going on, take care of business, and either keep going once you've taken care of business, or if you need to end the conversation and go, then you can. Okay. What does it take to learn a language? Well, the classroom is not enough. If you think about right now, class time is very shortened and it's virtual. Okay, we don't have a lot of practice one-on-one, so you need to be out in the community signing as much as possible. Your skills are going to improve greatly, so much more than if we were just in the classroom. If you're just relying on classroom time to practice, you're going to forget everything. Bye.